You never expect the breaking. No one wakes up thinking, today is the day everything falls apart. But it happens. The phone call, the loss, the news you didn't see coming, and suddenly the ground you were standing on doesn't feel steady anymore. Where is God when life unravels? Where is He when you can barely breathe, let alone believe? These aren't questions of rebellion. They're the honest cries of a hurting heart, and God doesn't flinch at them. The Bible is full of these moments, from David's raw psalms to Job's heartbreak to Jesus in the garden. Trust isn't born when life is easy. It's forged in the fire, when your plans fall apart and your prayers seem unanswered. It's one thing to say, God is good, when everything goes right. It's another to whisper it through tears. But that whisper, that's faith. Real trust begins when your control ends. When you've done all you can and nothing's working. When the door stays closed, the silence stretches, and the storm doesn't stop. That's when trust becomes more than a word. It becomes your anchor. God never promised a life without pain, but He did promise His presence. Even when the healing takes longer than expected, even when the ending you prayed for doesn't come, and in those moments His silence is not abandonment, it's invitation. An invitation to lean not on what you feel, but on what you know, that He is faithful, that He is for you, that He is still God, even here, even now. Trusting God when everything falls apart doesn't mean pretending. It doesn't mean forcing a smile while your heart breaks inside. It means showing up to the silence, sitting with the questions, choosing to stay even when nothing makes sense. And in that place, God meets you. Not always with answers, not always with quick rescue, but always with Himself. He brings peace that doesn't depend on the outcome, strength that shows up right when yours gives out. Remember the story of the 3 men in the fire, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They stood in the flames and said, "Even if our God doesn't deliver us, we will not bow." That's the kind of trust that confuses the world. The kind of faith that's not based on results, but on relationship. Even if. Those are 2 of the most powerful words in faith. Even if the prayer isn't answered the way you hoped. Even if the healing doesn't come tomorrow. Even if it hurts longer than expected. Still, God is worthy of your trust. Because He doesn't change when your circumstances do. And even when you feel like everything's been stripped away, He's still holding what matters most, you. You may not understand the why, but you can trust the who. He is the God who sees you, the God who hears the unspoken cries, the God who collects your tears not as waste, but as worship. So don't be afraid of the breaking. Sometimes that's where the rebuilding begins. Maybe right now you're standing in the ruins of dreams that didn't last, of prayers that haven't been answered, of plans that didn't work out. And it's tempting to believe that because everything around you is falling apart, God must be far away. But what if this is the very place He's drawing nearest? What if the wreckage isn't proof of God's absence, but evidence of His rebuilding? God isn't intimidated by brokenness. He does His best work with ashes. The cross proves that. It looked like the ultimate defeat. Darkness won. Hope died. Heaven went silent. But 3 days later, resurrection. And if God can bring life from death, He can bring beauty from your breaking. Right now, He's working in ways you can't see, laying foundations beneath the surface, strengthening your soul, shaping your trust not around outcomes, but around intimacy with Him. And it's okay if your prayers are messy, if you come to Him with trembling hands and tired hope. He understands. God isn't asking for perfect faith. He's asking for presence, for honesty, for you to just keep showing up, even in the storm. Faith isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet surrender. Sometimes it's a whispered, "God, I still trust you," through tears. And that kind of faith, that's the kind He honors. So even here, even now, when it hurts, when it's dark, when you feel like you've lost more than you can carry, He's with you, not just watching, not just waiting, but walking with you, one step at a time. There's something sacred that happens when you keep walking with God, even when your heart feels heavy. When you wake up day after day with unanswered questions, but you still whisper, "I'm here, Lord." That's not weakness, that's strength. Not the kind the world celebrates, but the kind heaven sees, the kind that moves angels, the kind that holds weight in eternity. See, trust that is born in silence becomes unshakable, not because it understands everything, but because it knows the one who does. You may feel like you're just surviving, but God is growing something in you, a deeper awareness of His presence, a richer understanding of His love, a faith that's not built on signs or answers, but on relationship. The longer you walk with Him in the dark, the more clearly you recognize His voice when the light returns. Because this valley, it's not permanent. You will not stay here forever. There is joy ahead. There is clarity coming. There is purpose in the pain. But even before that happens, God is enough. Right here, right now. He is not just the God of your breakthroughs. He is the God who sits beside you in the waiting, in the questions, in the ache. So don't rush this part. Let it do its work. Let it deepen your roots. Let it soften your heart. Because when the story turns, when the breakthrough comes, you'll look back on this valley and realize, this was holy ground. This was where trust grew. This was where you stopped chasing outcomes and started clinging to Him. And that's where real transformation begins. You may not realize it now, but every quiet yes to God matters. When you choose not to numb the ache, but bring it to Him. When you silence the distractions and sit in the stillness. When you decide to believe, not because you feel it, but because you've anchored your hope in Him. That's worship. Not loud, not dramatic, but honest. He sees it. He sees when your lips can't form the prayer, but your soul sighs in His direction. He sees the tears that never fall, but still sting. He sees the part of you that keeps showing up when it would be easier to shut down. And He's not waiting for a more polished version of you. He's not saying, "Come back when your faith is stronger," or "Come when you've figured it out." He's saying, "Come now." Because the power of God doesn't wait for perfect faith. It meets you right where you are, in the doubt, in the tension, in the silence. This is what makes His love so radical. He's not just present when you're praising. He's present when you're breaking. He's not just near when you're strong. He's near when you're barely holding on. That's what separates this faith from religion. It's not about how well you perform, but how fully you're known and still chosen. So today, even if all you have is a whisper, let it rise. Let your tired heart be honest with God. Let your breath be your prayer. Let the silence hold space for healing. He's not afraid of your questions. He's not threatened by your sadness. He just wants your heart, real, raw, and here. Still ready. You don't have to force hope to feel real. Sometimes it starts small, like a flicker you're afraid to trust. But God can work with that. He's not asking you to climb a mountain today. He's asking you to take one step, to choose faith over fear in this moment, even if your voice trembles when you say, "I still believe." Because faith that survives the silence becomes faith that endures the storm. It's the kind that doesn't unravel when life doesn't go according to plan. It's the kind that anchors you when the winds pick up again. And that's the kind of faith God is building in you. Not shallow faith, not easy faith, but deep faith. Faith that knows how to stand even when the ground feels shaky. Faith that chooses love over bitterness. Faith that keeps showing up. So when it's quiet, when heaven feels still, remember, God is still working. Maybe he's not fixing what you asked for yet. Maybe he's fixing something deeper. Maybe the delay isn't punishment, it's preparation. He's shaping your heart, sharpening your vision, tuning your ears to hear his whisper in the chaos. And one day, you'll look back on this stretch of silence and realize it wasn't empty. It was sacred. A place where your roots grew deeper than you thought possible. A space where you didn't lose faith. You found it. If you're ready, let's move to... There's a kind of strength that only grows in silence, not the kind that flexes or performs, but the kind that quietly endures, that keeps breathing, that keeps praying, even when it feels like no one's listening. Maybe that's what God is growing in you, not a showy faith, but a steady one, a faith that isn't shaken by silence because it's rooted in who God is, not in what you feel. Because feelings change, emotions rise and fall, but God, He stays. He stayed with Elijah in the cave. He stayed with Joseph in the prison. He stayed with Jesus in the garden, and He is staying with you now. So don't misread this silence as absence. Don't assume the quiet is a closed door. Sometimes it's a holy pause, a sacred waiting, a space where God prepares you for what you're not ready to carry yet. You've been asking for answers, for breakthroughs, for rescue, and maybe God will bring them. But first, He's bringing Himself. Because what you need most right now isn't clarity, it's presence. Not a plan, but a person. Not noise, but nearness. And that's exactly what He offers. Even when it's quiet, even when it's dark, even when your hope feels tired, He is still here. If you're ready. You've been walking through the silence for longer than you expected. The prayers you whispered in tears still feel unanswered. The healing you asked for hasn't come. The clarity you begged for remains clouded. And maybe you're wondering, how much longer? But in this slow, quiet walk, something is forming, something unshakable. God isn't just fixing things around you. He's forming something within you. Faith that no longer depends on visible signs. Peace that doesn't come from circumstances, but from Him. Trust that doesn't panic when heaven seems still. See, some answers come quickly, but others come slow because they go deep. God is not in a hurry with your heart, and while you're waiting, He's working. He's healing places in you you've never let Him touch. He's mending trust, not just between you and Him, but between you and your own soul. He's teaching you that your worth was never in what you achieve, but in who you are, His. So hold steady, not because you feel strong, but because He is. This silence won't last forever. And when the next chapter opens, you'll realize this quiet was never empty. It was full of grace, of transformation, of God. And maybe now, you're starting to feel something shift. Not everything has changed. The situation might still look the same, but something inside you feels different, stronger, clearer. Because while you waited, you learned to breathe again. Not rushed, not frantic, but slow, intentional, anchored. You stopped trying to fix everything and started learning to simply be with God. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Now when the silence comes again, and it will, you won't fear it, because now you know. Silence doesn't mean absence, it can mean presence, a deeper one. You've learned how to listen in the stillness, how to let go of the need to perform, how to let God hold the pieces you were never meant to carry alone. You've learned what real faith is, not noise, not drama, but quiet confidence that He is who He says He is, even when He seems quiet. And one day, when someone else feels like giving up in the silence, you'll sit beside them and you won't need to say much. Just be there, present, still. And in that moment, you'll know why it all mattered, not just for you, but for someone else's hope too. Silence doesn't just teach you about God, it teaches you to reflect Him. And now you carry a stillness the world can't shake.